The rise of communism, socialism, and fascism have a repeated pattern that follow very similar tactics. These tactics typically begin with the promise of an easier life with lots of free benefits. All that is required is for a population willing to trust an authority that promised to deliver. However, in practice throughout history, all governments without checks and balances results with the loss of human rights and a society based on fear and servitude. This presentation will provide a comparison between the German Nazi Party and today's new United States Democrat Party. Along with the promise of the redistribution of wealth, free medical benefits and education, and the promise to end capitalism, Adolf Hitler gave rise to the Nazi Party, which also led to World War II, the deaths of 75 million people, and the suffering of countless millions more. What most Americans don't know is that the term Nazi is a German acronym that translates into English as the National Socialist German Workers' Party. In other words, German Nazis were socialists. Today's U.S. Democrat leaders have taken a sharp turn toward the extreme left and are collectively promoting a socialist agenda for America. Similar to the promises made by Hitler, Democrat leaders have promised voters the redistribution of wealth, free medical benefits and education, along with additional socialist concepts of our day. In other words, Democrats are following in almost the exact same footsteps as the German Nazi Party. In recent history, other socialist countries have risen and then fallen, with disastrous consequences. One of America's greatest rivals of the 20th century was the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republic, also known as the USSR. Within its borders, commonly referred to as the Iron Curtain, its leader, Joseph Stalin, killed tens of millions of its own citizens to establish and maintain control and then silence free thought. In 1991, the USSR collapsed, while in America, capitalism proved victorious. For both the Nazis and the Democrats, propaganda is by far their most powerful tool, a tool used to control their societies. Propaganda is defined as the dissemination of information, facts, arguments, rumors, half-truths, or lies to influence public opinion. It is human nature that if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. Both Hitler and U.S. Democrat Party leaders exploit propaganda to the absolute max. Using the technologies of their day, Nazi propaganda exploited newspapers and magazines, radio shows and news broadcasts, theater and films, large-scale public displays, education facilities and materials, censorship of all information sources, fake news, which was as common back then as it is today, and of course, fear and intimidation tactics. Modern Democrats exploit all the same propaganda techniques used by the Nazis, plus the added capabilities of modern technologies, which far exceed the tools available to Hitler. Every home in America has a television set which we willingly use to invite propaganda front and center into every household for all family members to experience. Cell phones enable almost everyone to carry with them a source for propaganda everywhere they go. The internet is a primary source for information of all types, including propaganda. Today, the Democrat Party controls most of America's propaganda sources. Modern technology represents a continuous source of never-ending propaganda. You may wonder, how powerful is propaganda? Consider this. Today, the German population is regarded by the world as a compassionate people. However, just a generation ago, Nazi propaganda convinced the German society that they should persecute and exterminate millions of Jews, including 1.5 million Jewish children. The Holocaust. In America today, Democrat Party propaganda is used to create and spread extreme hatred and the violence that comes from it, capable of convincing white people to hate and kill other white people because of the color of their skin, like this Dallas shop owner beaten to death by a violent Democrat-sponsored mob. Both Hitler and U.S. Democrat Party leaders have deployed intimidation tactics to force their opponents and populations into submission. Hitler established a civilian militant organization known as the Brown Shirts. The activities of this militia were dedicated to violent acts against anyone or any other organization that opposed Hitler or the Nazi Party. The Brown Shirts eventually numbered in the millions. Mobs of brown shirts would routinely outnumber police, intimidating the police and forcing the police to stand down. Today, the Democrat Party and their affiliated organizations have provided billions of dollars to violent civilian organizations like Antifa and Black Lives Matter. These violent and racist organizations have actively orchestrated destructive riots in most major U.S. cities across America. The objective is to destabilize the U.S. government so that the Democrats can seize complete control of the country. Democrat leader Nancy Pelosi openly supports and encourages the violence, crime, destruction, and the deaths caused by the rioters that they fund. Within just 3 months of Hitler being elected as German Chancellor, the Nazi Party dissolved the prevailing elected parliament, burned down the parliament building, suspended all constitutional protections including the right to assemble, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and all restraints on investigations. In addition, Hitler established a vicious secret police known as the Gestapo. The socialists had finalized their takeover of everything within Germany. Today, as Democrat-funded violence erupts, police across the country battle the socialist rioters and take a stand between the Democrat Party militias and the general population, a thin blue line of protection. Meanwhile, Democrats openly threaten to undermine both the Supreme Court and the U.S. Senate. Democrat Party leaders stand silent behind their militias with the objective to intimidate and crush all political opposition. Along with socialism comes an intolerance commonly known as cancel culture. Anything or anyone that does not fit the narratives of the socialist agenda is eliminated or canceled. As a part of an effort to align German minds and culture with Nazi ideals, brown shirts in towns across Germany burned millions of books considered to be un-German. German history was erased and rewritten, and then the new version of history was promoted using propaganda. Any dissent was met with Nazi violence and potentially death. Today, mobs of Democrat-controlled militia have taken to the streets in almost all major cities in America, and they are coordinated so as to intimidate all people everywhere. Fear of these mobs forces a culture of canceling anything not consistent with the Democrat Party agenda. Due to mob pressure to villainize police, the CEO of Lego stated, "In light of recent events, Lego has requested the below products to be removed from websites and any marketing ASAP," listing 31 Lego toy sets that depicted scenes of police, firefighters, and the White House. An innocent child's toy was canceled. Teachers that won't promote the Democrat propaganda are canceled, fired. Television shows that present police in a positive way are canceled. Even beloved movies that show cops in a positive way are canceled. This is Bernal Trammell, a shop owner that actively supported a non-Democrat political candidate. In response, an agent from the Democrat Party paid Bernal a visit in his store during the middle of the day and shot Bernal, killing him. Both the German Nazis and today's U.S. Democrat Party leaders recognize the importance of indoctrinating young people to solidify their future. Over 90% of Germany's children were indoctrinated into an organization known as the Hitler Youth Group. Not only did it allow Nazis to program children at their most impressionable age, but it let the Nazis remove them from the influence of their parents, some of whom opposed the regime. The Nazi Party knew that family units and their associated values were an obstacle to Nazi goals. To overcome this, all Hitler youth groups included hefty doses of propaganda that promoted an almost religious devotion to Hitler, a devotion so intense that children would frequently tell Gestapo on their parents if they witnessed any un-Nazi behavior. For parents, it was like living with a Nazi spy. In 1945, the desperate Nazi leadership began pulling boys out of school and drafting them for suicide missions, and if they refused, they were executed. Today, the U.S. Democrat Party has been infiltrating the faculty of college campuses across America. Teachers that don't promote the teachings of the Democrat propaganda are being canceled. Free speech and thought is being purged from college campuses and replaced with intolerance. In our high schools, students are being programmed with the same Democrat propaganda. High school teachers not willing to promote Democrat Party propaganda are also being purged. Democrat Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has publicly stated that the objective is to capture kids while they are still in high school. In this Oakland, California, first grade class, during just one circle time, 6-year-olds were programmed on the subject of white privilege, microaggressions, gender inequality, gender identity, and structural racism. Which brings the question, what are your children or your grandchildren being exposed to? Is their teacher programming them to believe that they were born racist just because of the color of their skin? As disappointing as it may be, the unfolding political strategies of the modern U.S. Democrat Party are currently following almost the exact same strategies implemented by the German Nazis, which were also used by the Soviets of the USSR and the communists of today's China. Because the Democrat Party is so well funded and controls so much propaganda, they represent a serious threat to the future of the United States of America. If today's Democrats get control of America, it may be the beginning of the end for the free world. And this holds true for all countries that depend on America. The Democrats are already strategizing how to purge American society of political opposition and punish those that have opposed them. The temptation to rule the world has always been too great to resist. The question is, what will you do right now to stop a new Hitler from happening again?